Good evening, everyone. As we begin the readout tonight, one day after Donald Trump got on a stage and called federal law enforcement vicious monsters and the president of the United States the enemy of the people, we got a prime lesson in just how effective it is when a corrupt president is allowed to put so many judges on the bench. That's because a federal judge who Trump picked today did him a huge favor, to put it in Trumpian terms, on an investigation that could not be more critical to our national security. U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon released her ruling today granting the request by Trump's legal team for a special master to review the material seized from Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort and residence to look for any privileged material. Now, while that process unfolds, the judge is blocking the Justice Department from continuing its investigation into Trump's theft and grossly negligent mishandling of classified documents. Now, not only has every single federal prosecutor and former Department of Justice lawyer that we have spoken to on this show said there was no need for a special master in this case, so did Trump's own former Attorney General and fixer, William Barr.
I think the whole idea of a special master is a bit of a red herring. What people are missing is that all the other documents taken, even if they claim to be executive privilege, either belong to the government because they're government records, even if they're classified, even if they're subject to executive privilege, they still belong to the government and go to the archives. If, in fact, he sort of stood over scores of boxes, not really knowing what was in them, and said, I hereby declassify everything in here, that would be such an abuse and shows such recklessness that it's almost worse than taking the documents.
Now, what we know is that Donald Trump admits that he took the documents. He admits that they were not only in a storage room in his completely insecure resort, but that they were also in his private office. We know that some of these documents were classified, with markings putting them at the highest level of the most highly protected materials in the U.S. government. And among the materials seized were numerous envelopes marked classified that were completely empty. And yet, despite all of that, this 41-year-old judge, appointed by Trump in the waning months of his presidency, has decided that Trump has the right to have the investigation of that crime halted. Leading up to this investigation, Harvard constitutional scholar Lawrence Tribe said this about the judge, quote, she could either redeem herself by starting to act like a real federal judge, unaffected by the identity of the president who appointed her, or earn the condemnation of national security experts and legal mavens by botching the biggest case most judges ever touch in a lifetime and endangering the lives of our spies abroad, unquote. It now appears that she has chosen to do the latter. Perhaps it should not come as much of a surprise, though. She telegraphed last month that she was already inclined to rule in Trump's favor. This is, of course, what Trump has always had in mind for his appointed judges, for them to do his bidding. And MSNBC as MSNBC opinion columnist Dean Obadala writes, Trump himself encouraged Americans to think of federal judges as beholden to the presidents who appointed them. Remember, Trump has gone on the attack against judges appointed by President Obama as, quote, Obama judges. In 2016, he attacked a federal judge who was handling a lawsuit against his corrupt, fake Trump university, and even called for his recusal because he was, quote, an Obama pick, totally biased, hates Trump. He did the same in 2018 when a judge appointed by President Obama put a hold on his plan for refusing asylum applications from immigrants who crossed the border illegally. With Trump, he always looks at everything as my or mine. My generals, my Kevin, my classified documents, my judges. Apparently he's got one. Joining me now, Hugo Lowell, congressional reporter for The Guardian, Elie Mystal, justice correspondent for The Nation, and Glenn Kirshner, MSNBC legal analyst and former federal prosecutor. And Elie, I'm going right down the middle to you because I'm not a lawyer, you are. But even I know that if I went into a bank and robbed it, brought the money home, took it home, and then went and spent a bunch of it and bought a Birkin bag and a car and all sorts of things, and the feds came to take it, I couldn't then say, hold up. I'm gonna need you to get a special master, and they're gonna need to, go through all this stuff because that's my bag, and that's my car, and that's my money. How on earth could a judge who made it through law school think that Donald Trump can take the property of the government, the federal government, take it home, and then have to have a special master decide whether they can investigate him?
Because she's biased and corrupt. Like, I don't know what to tell everybody anymore. Like, I've been saying this since he took office. When you allow Republicans to control the courts, you get nothing. Trump judges do not believe in the rule of law. They do not believe in precedent, do not believe in facts. They do not believe in logic. They just believe in whatever's going to help Donald Trump. And they've proven it again and again and again. So when I say that you cannot trust Trump judges, I don't know what more evidence you need for that fact, right? Like, look, the argument that he has executive privilege is so what the scientists would call stupid, that it's difficult to explain it, right? Like the idea that, first of all, privilege goes to the current president. We only have one president at a time. So it's not Trump's privilege to have. But even if it was, as you pointed out with Bill Barr, who believes that the executive of the United States is something closer to a king than a president, even Bill Barr says that if he had a privilege, that privilege still goes with the government, not with Trump. And so these documents belong in the archives. It'd be like if Trump's called for executive privilege over the plane and then parked the plane, Air Force One, at Mar-a-Lago. Can't do that. Even if it was his, we'd have the right to take it back. But when you allow Trump judges to infect the system, these are the kinds of decisions you get. And people, and this is my last point, people in the media need to stop standing for these Trump judges, need to stop pretending that these Trump judges are like the rest of the judicial system, right? They have to stop carrying water for them and start calling them out as they are, corrupt, leave behind gifts from the Trump administration to destroy the rule of law in America.
Just so quick, and I'm going to get my other guests in, but just stay with you for just a second, Ellie. Does it surprise you that her justification for saying that you're wrong about that and that he can claim executive privilege against the current president, that she cited Kavanaugh, one of his other judges, and said that, well, Kavanaugh says that he can do it. So apparently, according to her, he can take the Air Force One home, park it at Mar-a-Lago, and at least she and Kavanaugh would be like, it's an open question.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me because, again, the argument is so stupid that she's got to reach for straws. Like, she's got to grab at whatever there is because there's no actual legal basis for her ruling. But even Kavanaugh, even the Kavanaugh opinion he cites, he said maybe. He didn't say definite. And so to go from Kavanaugh's maybe to, like, actually appointing a special master, remember, the whole point here is to delay, right? So guess who gets to appoint the special master? She does, right? So that takes a lot of time for however long she wants to wait. Or the Department of Justice can appeal. But if they appeal to the 11th Circuit, which is controlled by Republicans. So the 11th Circuit could then wait on that appeal for a long time. But even if the 11th Circuit goes super quick, right? They could appeal that to the Supreme Court, which, as we already know, infected by Trump judges, and they could delay and delay and delay. And the whole idea here is not to get him off because they can't because he's guilty, but it's to delay it to the point where they can get to another election, remove the current Department of Justice, get a pro-Trump, perhaps Trump himself, back in the White House. That's their game plan. And Eileen Cannon, Trump judge Eileen Cannon, is playing right into that game plan.
Et voila. Let me bring you in, Glenn. Have you, as a former prosecutor, ever had an instance where you had a theft, where you had the product of the theft in the custody of law enforcement, and have a judge intervene and say, because when law enforcement went into that property and took the products of that theft, there were personal items mixed in with the items owned by someone else, the items that were stolen, that because there might have been a magazine that Trump subscribed to in that list of things, or some clothing that was Trump's that were literally thrown in the box with the classified materials. Have you ever heard of law enforcement being halted, saying you cannot investigate this person any further? Has that ever happened in your career?
Not in 30 years of prosecuting cases in courts, both military and civilian. This is the kind of stuff that gets dealt with, if at all, in motions to suppress in the run-up to trial or in run-of-the-mill evidentiary rulings at trial. And I'll tell you, Joy, the most dire thing that this judge did, and you just put your finger on it, She ordered the government to stop criminally investigating Trump and company for the theft of national security information. You know what that means? First of all, the good news is DOJ said, look, we've already looked at all of it, and we are already, following investigative leads based on it. But here's where the problem comes in. Let's assume that based on their review of these documents that Donald Trump stole from the federal government and unlawfully concealed, even in violation of a subpoena at Mar-a-Lago, let's assume that the federal prosecutors subpoenaed people to testify as a result of what they learned in those documents. And maybe those witnesses are scheduled to appear before the grand jury tomorrow and give really important sworn testimony about the crimes of Donald Trump. Judge Cannon just ordered the government to stop, withdraw those subpoenas. You know what else? When we seize paper, documents as evidence in a criminal case, you know what we often do? We submit it for forensic testing. We look for latent fingerprints that help us identify a perpetrator. We look for DNA, epithelial cells that slough off your skin. You leave them on documents. Those forensic tests of this evidence of crime that was found in Donald Trump's possession, those tests may be ongoing, and Judge Cannon just said, stop investigating Donald Trump. That, in my opinion, is judicial insanity.